Hey everyone, it's Types. In the Mega era of the Pokemon TCG has had a ton of Pokemon EX cards. This is not surprising because the mechanic isn't new. It's returning from Scarlet and Violet, and I guess kind of returning from even earlier than that. But it, of course, introduces the Mega EXs to the game, which are 3 prize Pokemon as opposed to 2 prizers, which the regular EXs were. Recently, as in yesterday, I actually made a video breaking down the Megas and their card design and ranking all of them, so you can check that out if you haven't seen it. But today we're going to be taking a look at the regular EXs and taking a look at exactly how good they actually are because, unsurprisingly, the Megas have been getting a lot of the attention. They are what these sets are named after and things like that. But today we're looking at the non-Megas in the Mega era of the Pokemon TCG and, the non-Mega EXs. Specifically, we're taking a look at the new ones. So if I look up the Mega series and then the non-Mega EXs, we do see some cards like Steve's Metagross EX, which came out first in Destined Rivals. So I'm actually I'm going to go set by set here, and we'll start with Ascended Heroes, actually, because Ascended Heroes had a bunch of EX. It has so many cards, and also has a lot of reprints, so a lot of like weird stuff's going to get kind of caught up in there. So I'm going to talk about that first, then we'll filter that out. First card we have here is Erica's Vileplume EX, as well as we have a handful of other trainers Pokemon from this era, or from this set specifically, which is kind of weird. They're kind of rolling over from, some older cards there. But we have, I believe, just 3. We have Erica's Vileplume EX, and Erica's Vileplume EX does, what's it do? It like heals or something, and also can do sleep and poison. This card is actually not good. I mean, unsurprisingly, it's not good, but also doesn't really interact with the other Erica's stuff. I know it's like I've seen it played once or twice, I guess, but it's unsurprisingly not good. The other Erica stuff is a little interesting, having synergy with Erica's. This one doesn't really at all, so it's not, I mean, it is some healing, it is something, but it's not a very interesting card here. Pincurchin EX is also another trans Pokemon. This one here interacts. I realized I forgot one as well, so we'll get to that. I just didn't open it, but I'll talk about that. But Pincurchin EX, this one was an older card. Erica's as well as Larry's were new to Ascended Heroes in terms of trainers Pokemon, but Hops and then also Team Rockets obviously have had cards earlier. And what this card does is it lets you draw some and do some damage when you attack. And then also when you're hit into, you do some damage in return. It's not very good. It's a little better than it looks with like pretty powerful hop supporting stuff, but it's not a super interesting card. Then to the Team Rocket's Kangaskhan EX. This card has seen a little bit of play. This is actually more than I was expecting. Interesting to see it in Metang decks with Team Rocket's Petrol. But anyways, you need to play a Team Rocket supporter, then you do 220. Otherwise, you just do 120. And yeah, I mean, it's okay. It's not super good, but it's an okay EX here. Also not super exciting. And as I said, there's also Larry's. There's Larry's Dunsparce EX. This card interacts. I guess it is a Larry's Pokemon, and it's meant to be paired with Larry's Kamala, which accelerates. Larry's Kamala is a pretty interesting card, in my opinion. Larry's Dunsparce EX isn't super interesting, but, it does... on average 40 for each energy attached to it. You flip a coin for each energy. You do 80 for each heads there. It can do some fun stuff or do nothing, So it's fine in terms of being interesting. Power level wise, it's pretty not good. To be honest, most of the EXs from Ascended Heroes are not good. That's kind of why we're starting there. There's a bunch of kind of filler EX I'm not going to talk about. Some of those are kind of filler, but there's Zangoose EX, there is Togedemaru EX, there's Richsteel EX. There's, I guess Mandibus is also filler. I kind of like this card, but it's pretty bad and not interesting. There's also Regirock EX. There is Stunfisk EX. This one actually can be a trapping Pokemon, but it's not super good at that. And that's about it. There is also, what else? Azumarill EX. Azumarill EX is kind of cool, moving energy to it, but it's not super. It's pretty bad, to be honest. Then there's also... like there's a couple more. There's Voltorb EX. This card, super random. I don't know why we got this random preview on an EX, and yet it's not very good. And then there's also, I believe, one more in... No, actually, I think that's it. There are obviously... There's like Erica's, so there's those four trainers Pokemon, and there's also a bunch of Megas. And there are a couple more. Specifically, there are the last Terras, or presumably the last Terras in Miraidon EX and Koraidon EX. They're okay. They're kind of generic, but they are Terras. You can play, specifically Koraidon, seeing a little bit of play. pre-rotation, I think, with like Terra Box stuff being like a weakness hitter or something. I don't know. I haven't like actually played with or against this card ever, I don't think, but it's something. I guess I don't know. It's pretty bad. Most of these cards are pretty bad here. So that's why I wanted to start with his Edit Heroes. Um, let's see. How do I search? Yeah, there we go. I wanted to look for cards that are not in Ascended Heroes that knocked off a bunch, which oh yeah, I forgot. There's not many that aren't Ascended Heroes. As I said, Ascended Heroes is a bunch of reprints like Pikachu EX, Cinderace EX, and so on, and those cards I'm not counting here. So we just have a few left. We just have 9, which is interesting, and obviously not a lot. I guess the first card we'll talk about here is going to be Lapras EX as well. Of these, this one was a promo, kind of like Hops Pinkerton EX or Team Rocket's Kangaskhan EX. Those cards were promos and came out later than they kind of were supposed to. This one is, like a lot of those cards as well. It's kind of filler. This these promos as well as cards that come in special products are also the really only cards internationally that are coming in our sets being added from the Japanese set. For example, Perfect Order was mainly made up of Moongus Zero, but there were a couple of cards that were added, and those cards are, or I guess, Nullifying Zero. Whatever. What's the attack name on? Oh, it's not here. What's the attack name on Mega Zygarde? Yeah, Nullifying Zero. But anyways, Lapras EX was not in Nullifying Zero, but is in Perfect Order because it's a weird promo. But anyways, this card does damage for energy attached to it and like switches, which is something, I guess. It's like kind of something. But it's honestly saying it's something is a bit of a stretch. I haven't seen this card played, and it's not super interesting or powerful there. Then we have the other ones though, and these are actually just from Phantasmal Flames and in Perfect Order. We don't see any from, well, there are also some from Chaos Rising, which I will take a look at after this, but throwing it out. There have only been 3 main sets of the Mega era, and as I said, there's Ascended Heroes, but most of those were filler there, and that's not a main set. And the Mega Evolution main set, or first set, the base set, didn't have any non-Mega EXs, but we do see some in Phantasmal Flames. The first one is Oricorio EX. This card, though, is kind of weird because it only interacts with Megas, or it like only works if you have a Mega in play, and then you can accelerate Fire Energy from your hand to your bench Fire Pokemon. This card is actually, it's been played with Charizard, with Mega Charizard. Could also theoretically, we don't have this card yet, but you could pair it with Mega Heatran EX, probably, maybe. I don't know. I made a video talking about this, maybe even 2 videos talking about it, because that card will be coming. We don't know if it'll be Fire type though, but I think if it is, it could be really cool, giving you access to really good energy acceleration turn 1 going second. That being said, it's not super. I mean, it's very much tied to Megas, and really it's pretty heavily tied to Mega Charizard there being the Mega Charizards. There are multiple of them, and they're both all right. They're like the better Fire Megas. They're not super good, but obviously Charizard EX, the 2 prizer, saw a lot of play. Obviously not in the game right now, though. Then we have the next one, Rotom EX. Rotom EX is actually super cool. This one is a little niche, like kind of gimmicky, kind of rogue deck like, because it only works with Rotom, the single prizes, or the Pokemon with Rotom in their name, and I guess it works with the EX as well. But what it does is lets you attach 2 tools to your Rotoms. Then there are, I think 5 Rotoms. I'm just gonna look this up. I'm gonna look this up real quick. I should have known this beforehand. There are 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, there's 5 in standard. There's 1 to 5 Rotoms, but there's 5 Rotoms with the attack gadget show doing 30 for each tool in play. It's really fun. Honestly, I made a video about the Rotom deck, which was like super weird. I think I played 3 energies or something. It was like honestly a very sketchy deck, but it was okay. It was actually legitimately decent. But anyways, the deck is kind of weird, and this card is kind of the deck. This card alongside the other single prize Rotoms, and that's fine, right? This card is fine. When I in my video, which I believe I posted yesterday, talked about Megas, I talked about Mega Bomb Snow EX, and actually got a comment as well. Someone kind of agreeing that it's like kind of silly fun there. Not what you want to see out of all the cards. It doesn't add a ton of depth to the game, but adds something kind of silly and fun there. And I think Rotom EX does. This card also has it has a shocking amount of depth as well, but definitely a fun card, not a super powerful card, but kind of cool. Then we have Miss Magic EX. Miss Magic EX is super weird. This card keeps confusion when your opponent switches, which is something. It's definitely weird. I suppose I could revisit this card after Turo and Penny rotated. I have not. It also, somewhat strangely, doesn't enable confusion. I mean, it like keeps it on board. I suppose it does if they switch, it will like cause confusion. But ultimately, this card isn't good. I mean, its attack isn't good, and its ability also isn't that good, and you kind of just leave it in the active there. It's a kind of funny concept. I think there's some more confusion support, special condition stuff in the next expansion, Pitch Black. The next expansion in Japan called Abyss Eye or something, which will be Pitch Black internationally there. We do have Chaos Rising before that. But Miss Magius EX, and the confusion mechanic as a whole, and even the special condition stuff, it's all not super powerful, right? So ultimately, as I guess quote unquote cool as this is, it's pretty bad, and your opponent could also just try to attack through it. So it's bad. It doesn't have super interesting or powerful synergy. We have Apollyon EX. This card is actually pretty alright. It's immune to effects of attacks, and it takes a little less damage and does decent damage. But it's not that interesting. I'm not gonna lie. This card is pretty boring. It's seen some play specifically with Steven's Metagross. I've played with and against it, and it's like kind of cool. But I'd say it's the least cool part about that deck. I'd say Steven's Metagross EX is actually pretty cool. This card is pretty boring. In terms of power level, it, as I said, is the strongest of the EXs we've seen, I think. Maybe Oricorio EX is better. Oricorio EX is like okay. Specifically looking at pre-rotation, as Charizard EX was so good, and the Mega Charizard was played in that sometimes. But ultimately, Apollyon EX is decent, but it's not super interesting. You have Decidueye EX. This card's kind of cool with the matching hand size stuff. Or not matching hand size. This is a hand size thing for your opponent, putting them to 4. You need to judge or villain them, and then you are able to do decent damage and discard an energy. I mean, it's something. It's not super good, not super interesting, but it is something. The Lazzle EX, I guess, is also something. Your second attack is hit and run and does some special conditions and damage. First attack searches for cards. It's something, again, I'd say pseudo-control-y, kind of, maybe. I don't know. This card definitely feels a little directionless, being, again, quite weak and kind of filler feeling, honestly. So definitely not a super powerful card. Then we have Voltal EX. This card's actually super cool. Knockout each Pokemon in play of your opponent that has 50 HP or less remaining. I have not used this card or really seen it used, but it is cool in your second attacks. Like, it's fine. It's not super good, but it's all right. Ultimately, this card is kind of fun, not super good, just like a good chunk of these, but it is cool. Then we have the last EX currently in standard that's of the Mega era that isn't a Mega, and that card is Meowth EX. Meowth EX is obviously very good. Let you search for a supporter on play. These are definitely well, I say these, it's just this one. And this is the kind of Pokemon I like to see with powerful abilities, because ultimately in the Pokemon TCG, you can run and are going to be running a bunch of Pokemon, but you're only going to be attacking with a handful of them. So having powerful abilities makes Pokemon interesting and playable, and Meowth is the definition of powerful there. I guess playable in a legitimately high level sense. Letting you do some different things. It lets you it can help you set up, it can help you close out games, and it can help you in just so many different situations, and is also interesting where it is a liability as well, and it actually feels really bad to start. It is, I think I said this previously, some other videos, that it is probably the worst Pokemon to start in the current Pokemon TCG standard format, which is unfortunate, but it is still very good. Though I've also said this, I haven't played this card that much. I know a lot of people have, and it can be really good, or it can be just not as good. But it is ultimately still one of the, top 10 or so best Pokemon in standard. It is very powerful. And I'd like to see another Pokemon using this. So if you don't know what the ability does, it lets you search for supporter. It's called Last Ditch Catch, but then it says you can't use more than one ability that has Last Ditch in its name each turn. This is interesting because it's the only Pokemon with that in its name, which is kind of strange. So we'll see if we see another ability like that. I think I'd like to see it, obviously, because it seems like they're setting it up, but they've also done things like this in the past where they've just kind of referenced a card that doesn't really exist. I actually made a video kind of talking about this where I talked about a few examples and had Meowth EX ultimately as a card that we might see another ability like this, and theoretically it should be on a similar power level, right? That kind of makes sense. So hopefully we see something like that. I haven't heard any complaints about Meowth EX, which is surprising because people love to complain. I mean, let's be honest, I kind of love to complain at times too. I just recently made a couple of videos about live, but with Meowth EX, this card is, I think, a cool card, and if we see another card kind of like it doing something powerful in a different manner, we need to choose which one you want to use. It is interesting. If the other card is bad, then it just doesn't matter. If the other card is somehow even better, then again, it doesn't really matter. It needs to be something that's in some ways parallel to it. But then we have a handful more from the newest expansion that is now internationally, which is Ninja Spinner in Japan, Chaos Rising internationally. And we have Beedrill EX. Beedrill EX is kind of cool, doing damage for each Beedrill EX in play, or regular Beedrill, but we don't have any regular Beedrill. So it does 110 for each Beedrill EX in play. So a base of 110 there, and then more for each one on your bench. Kind of cool. Not super interesting in terms of, it's not super deep, but it's kind of cool. Then we have three more. We have Gorgas DX. Gorgas DX is actually probably the coolest of them. 30, 50 more for each of your bench Pokemon with any damage counters on it. And for 2, you can discard your own cover to your opponent's hand and do 140. It's okay. I guess. Hororondo is kind of fun, but it's not super powerful in terms of damage. I mean, it could get pretty big, and some of the setup stuff is kind of interesting, but it's not a super interesting card, unfortunately. Definitely in an alright range, but could definitely be better. Then we have Cobalion EX. This one switches in, or no, when it switches in, you can move Metal Energy to it, which is cool, I guess. But the attack's just 200 for 3 and can't attack back-to-back turns, so kind of a whole lot of nothing there. But you know, it's like Iron Leaves. Maybe it'll be good if it hits something good for weakness. I mean, there is Mega Frostos EX in Standard, which I do think is good, but it's not like that good, and certainly not something that. I mean, this is a weakness deck, but Iron Leaves is seen play mostly in decks that are running Grass Energy that aren't Grass decks. Really, any deck running Metal Energy is a legitimate Metal deck, so then you're not really getting anything out of this card. You're just doing, I don't know, you're just like doing stuff. So you're not doing stuff that actually gets you anywhere. So ultimately, this card could be good, maybe, kind of, sort of, but right now it's just not quite there, or it's not there. There isn't really any upside there. Then we have the next card, which is Tsuchino EX. This one is immune to damage half the time. I find that annoying, but obviously could be good. Probably not like competitive level good, but like okay and annoying or something. Then it does 40 free energy attached to it. This isn't that much damage, so ultimately this card is. It's also not super good, but it is a card here. Then we have, oh, that's it. Yeah, I have the other tab open, which is why I clicked there. I've definitely. Oh no, I closed Gourgeist. Yeah, so that's all the cards. There obviously are some megas in the set as well. I think there's 4 megas and 4 non-megas. Ultimately, though, I think there are a pretty cool selection of Pokemon there. That being said, there's just not that many, but I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comment section if you think that the selection of Pokemon is decent, if you'd like to see more from them. As I said, I would like to see more from them, but I, as always, appreciate all your thoughts in the comment section down below. And also make sure you like and subscribe. It really does help support me and the channel, and I also really appreciate all my YouTube members who have supported my channel. And you can become a YouTube member as well to support my channel and to get some stuff. If you have any questions about that, just ask as well. But I hope you all enjoyed, and as I was excited to see you in the next video.